Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed through my house like a cannon. My dog, Peanut, barked like the sky was falling. I froze, still clutching the bright orange pool hose that snaked from my backyard to the street drain. Water gushed out of it like a busted fire hydrant, sending rivers down the curb. And then I heard it. "Open this door now. This is the hoe." The voice was shrill, angry, and commanding. Through the peephole, I saw them. 3 of them, actually. Mrs. Cranberry, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, stood front and center, holding what looked like a laminated clipboard, like it was a sword. Behind her, Mr. Flint and Mrs. Needlemouth, I never learned her real name, but the name fit, stood like backup dancers ready to pounce. I opened the door just a crack. "What's going on?" I tried to sound brave, but my voice cracked like a 12-year-old in choir practice. "Mrs. Cranberry shoved the clipboard in my face. "You are in violation of Ho Code 12. Unauthorized water discharge. You're flooding the community. You better stop or we are calling the authorities." I blinked. But it's just pool water. That's when the sirens screamed from the corner of the street. I kid you not, they called the cops on me for draining my pool. And the worst part? The cops were pulling up right now, lights flashing like I was a bank robber. 3 hours earlier. Okay, maybe I should back up. My name's Casey. I live in a neighborhood that looks perfect from the outside. Perfect lawns, perfect houses, perfect people. But if you look a little closer, you'll see the cracks. The cracks are named the HOA. You see, ever since I bought my little fixer-upper, the HOA has been breathing down my neck. Paint your mailbox. Trim your hedges to exactly 4.5 inches. No plastic flamingos. The list went on. And even when I followed every rule, they found something else. But today was supposed to be different. I had one plan: drain my gross algae-filled pool, scrub it clean, and refill it. Easy, right? I even checked the bylaws. There was nothing about draining pools as long as the water didn't contain chemicals. Guess what? Mine didn't. It was just old rainwater, leaves, and the occasional dead bug. But I should have known. The moment I connected the hose and started draining, I saw her, Mrs. Cranberry, standing at the edge of her perfectly trimmed hedges, watching me like a hawk. She didn't say anything at first, but the moment the water hit the street drain, her face twisted like she had just smelled a dead fish. "What do you think you're doing, Casey?" She practically hissed it. "Draining my pool," I answered, keeping my tone friendly. I even smiled. "You can't do that without permission," she snapped. I blinked. Pretty sure I can. There's nothing in the rules against it." Her lips curled into a thin, mean smile. "We'll see about that." The calm before the sirens. For the next hour, I pretended everything was fine. I hummed, I scrubbed, I let the water flow. But the tension? It was like the eye of a hurricane. Neighbors peeked through their blinds. Mrs. Cranberry walked up and down the street with her phone pressed to her ear, nodding and whispering. It felt like I was living in some spy movie. And then, the unthinkable. A group of HOA members marched down the sidewalk like a neighborhood SWAT team. Clipboard, phone cameras, the works. "You're going to regret this," Mrs. Cranberry sneered. "We have called the police." At first, I laughed. Yeah, right. Over pool water? But my laugh died the moment I heard the sirens. The backyard looked like a war zone. The police officer squatted next to the flood, poking his finger into the water like he expected it to burn. His partner took photos of the swirling river that had turned our peaceful street into Venice, minus the gondolas. Mrs. Cranberry stood behind them, arms crossed, her smug grin stretching from ear to ear. "You see, officer? This is exactly what I told you. He's polluting the entire neighborhood. Toxic waste, no doubt. He must be arrested and fined immediately." "Arrested?" I blinked. Did this lady really just say arrested? Over some dirty pool water? The officer stood, wiping his wet hand on his pants. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, do you have proof that this water is safe?" he asked. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Proof? Who keeps proof that their pool water is just water? I mean, it's just rainwater, man. I haven't put chemicals in the pool for months, I stammered. Mrs. Cranberry interrupted me with the speed of a snake strike. "He's lying. Look at the color, the smell. This is a violation of City Water Management and HOA Code 12B. I have the rulebook right here." She waved her precious laminated HOA rulebook like it was a holy artifact. The police officer raised an eyebrow. "HOA rules are not enforceable by us, ma'am. We're here because of the hazardous waste report." "Hazardous waste?" I laughed. "Come on, guys, this is ridiculous." "That's for the city inspectors to decide," the cop replied, deadpan. "Hi, the ambush meeting." And then it happened. Mrs. Cranberry clapped her hands. From the shadows of manicured bushes and driveways, more neighbors appeared, phones in hand, recording, whispering, judging. It was like an ambush. "Everyone deserves to see this," Mrs. Cranberry announced dramatically. "Let's make an example of him." I stood frozen in the center of my backyard, the star of a show I never asked to be part of. Suddenly, Mrs. Needlemuth screamed. "My roses," she wailed, pointing at her garden like it had been hit by an asteroid. Everyone turned. And, yeah, okay, I admit it. The water had done a number on her roses. The mulch was floating like soup. Some roses leaned sideways like they were about to faint. Mrs. Cranberry's face twisted into a look of fake sadness. "You'll pay for those damages, Casey." The crowd started whispering louder now. "Can they do that?" "I heard. He's always breaking rules. My kid stepped in that water. What if it's toxic?" It was turning into a witch hunt. And in the center of it all, I was the witch. Lo, the calm before the next twist. The officers pulled me aside. "Look, Casey, technically, there's no crime. Yet. But if the city determines the water caused property damage or violates water codes, you'll be looking at fines. Serious ones." I rubbed my temples. "But I followed the rules." The officer gave me a tired look. "Sometimes following the rules isn't enough when you live in a place like this." They left me with a warning and a soggy yard full of angry neighbors. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Hi, the secret meeting. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope duct taped to my door. Urgent HOA meeting. Casey's violation. Mandatory. Inside was a letter filled with dramatic words like reckless endangerment, community safety crisis, and potential eviction. Eviction? That's when my rage boiled over. I spent the whole night researching the HOA rules, city codes, and even called the local water authority. Turns out, I was right. Totally. Legally. 100% right. The water was fine to discharge as long as it didn't contain active pool chemicals, which mine didn't. Mrs. Cranberry was bluffing. But the meeting? It was still happening. Cliffhanger. The rulebook showdown. The next evening, I walked into the HOA clubhouse. Every seat was filled. Faces stared at me like I was a criminal on trial. At the front of the room, Mrs. Cranberry sat at the head table, flanked by her two loyal guards. "We are here," she began, voice dripping with fake kindness, "to discuss the extreme violations committed by Casey and to vote on further actions." She smiled sweetly. "But first, Casey, do you have anything to say for yourself?" I held up the actual city water code book, all 400 pages of it, and dropped it onto the table with a loud thud that echoed through the silent room. "Oh," I said, smiling just as sweetly, "I have a lot to say." The heavy book landed like a bomb on the HOA table. Everyone jumped. Even Mrs. Cranberry flinched just a little. The room was so quiet, you could hear the buzzing of the old fluorescent lights overhead. I cleared my throat. "Page 112, Section 9, I said, flipping to the dog-eared page I'd marked in bold red sticky notes. City of Ridgeview Water Ordinance. It says, and I quote, "Residents may discharge untreated rainwater or pool water that contains no active chlorine, bromine, or harmful chemicals into the public drainage system." I paused, letting the words sink in, which means everything I did was 100% legal. Murmurs erupted across the room. Mrs. Cranberry's smile cracked, but she recovered fast. "Legal? Maybe. But what about your neighbor's properties? The damages? The mess you made? We will be voting on disciplinary actions according to HOA Code 12. B." She held up her precious laminated rulebook like it was the Bible. I smiled wider. "Yeah, about that, Mrs. Cranberry. I read your precious rulebook, and guess what? There is no HOA Code 12B. Gasps. Someone in the back even whispered, "Is that true?" Mrs. Cranberry's face turned redder than Mrs. Needlemouth's roses, before they drowned, of course. Lo, the setup. I should have felt victorious, but deep inside, something was off. Mrs. Cranberry wasn't the type to give up that easily. And I was right. She slammed her gavel on the table. "Order! Fine, maybe you found a loophole. But we will still vote on whether your behavior was reckless and harmful to the community. The HOA has the right to fine members for actions that disturb the peace and harmony of the neighborhood." There it was, the gray area, the weapon of all HOAs. She was playing dirty now. "But first," she said sweetly, "let's hear from the victims." She gestured, and like clockwork, Mrs. Needlemouth stood up, holding a sad, soggy rose in a plastic bag. "Look at what he did," she screamed, holding it up like it was evidence of a crime. "I spent years growing these. They were my babies. And now? Ruined." She started fake crying. The crowd murmured again. Even I started to sweat. It was like the courtroom scene from every movie where the villain twists the truth so well that even the hero starts to doubt himself. Hi, the twist nobody expected. But then, the unexpected happened. An old man stood up in the back row. Mr. Franklin. No one had seen him in years. He was the oldest resident in the neighborhood, pushing 90, and rumor had it he was a grumpy recluse who hated everyone. But now, he shuffled forward, cane tapping loudly. "Mrs. Cranberry," he said in a gravelly voice. Do you remember the flood of '9? Everyone stared. The flood, someone whispered. Mrs. Cranberry shifted uncomfortably. Of course, but what does that have to do with this? It has everything to do with this, Mr. Franklin said. Back then, the city installed special drains in our street, specifically to handle runoff from backyard pools. Because your son's pool burst and flooded the whole block, remember? Boom. It was like dropping a truth grenade. Mrs. Cranberry paled. You can't. Oh, I can, Mr. Franklin interrupted. And I have the city records to prove it. You see, Casey's water didn't break any laws, didn't damage anything the drainage system wasn't designed for. If your roses died, it's because you planted them too close to the storm drain, which the HOA rules clearly say you're not supposed to do. He turned to me and gave me a rare, sly wink. You did nothing wrong, kid. Lo, the calm before the next storm. The room exploded with whispers. Mrs. Cranberry was visibly shaking now, gripping her gavel like she wanted to hurl it at someone. But I wasn't going to stop there. Thank you, Mr. Franklin, I said. But just to make sure we all understand, let's review your own HOA landscaping guidelines. I pulled out the copy I had printed. Page 5, Section 2. Residents must maintain at least a 5-foot buffer between personal gardens and public drainage areas. I pointed at the photos I had secretly taken earlier of Mrs. Needlemouth's roses. They're right up to the drain. Violation of your own rules. Mic drop. Cliffhanger. The HOA's secret weapon. The crowd was now turning. People were whispering about the double standards, about Mrs. Cranberry's lies. It felt like I had them. But Mrs. Cranberry wasn't done. She stood, red-faced, but smiling a fake, oily smile. Well, Casey, you might have won this battle, but you forgot something important. She snapped her fingers. One of her flunkies handed her a manila envelope. She opened it slowly, dramatically. This is a petition signed by over half the neighborhood, requesting an emergency vote to remove your pool entirely for the safety and peace of the community. My jaw dropped. Mrs. Cranberry held the paper up high. Let's see you fight this one, Casey. The room erupted into chaos. I stood frozen. They were trying to take away my pool. After Mrs. Cranberry unveils the petition to force Casey to remove his pool, the HOA crowd seems ready to vote against him, but Casey doesn't back down. He quickly counters with a surprise move of his own, a petition he had secretly started after the police visit, collecting signatures from neighbors who were tired of the HOA's bullying tactics. He reveals over 30 signatures supporting not just keeping the pool, but also demanding a vote to remove Mrs. Cranberry from her position due to abuse of power and false claims. The meeting erupts into arguments, and sides begin to shift. Casey plays one final card, a recorded phone call he had with the city inspector earlier that day, confirming that his pool draining followed all legal procedures and that any damage to other properties was not his responsibility. The audio makes the room go quiet. Even some of Mrs. Cranberry's loyal followers look uneasy. Mrs. Cranberry panics and lashes out, accidentally admitting she exaggerated the hazardous discharge to make Casey look bad. Her words are caught on video by Mr. Franklin, who's been recording the entire meeting from the back row. As Chapter 4 ends, the crowd demands a formal vote not against Casey, but against the current HOA board. Casey, once the villain, is now becoming the hero of the neighborhood.